So welcome so late, last session at GDC. We want to remind you to fill out the evaluation form when we are done. And please give us good results.
and please turn down your handies, because, your mobile phones, because it's bad for the recording.
So that's a device. In Germany we call it a handy, so that's quite weird too. Okay, thank you very much for coming to our talk. It's about managing intercultural teams and the smoldering conflicts you would experience. We are from the German game development studio Ubisoft Blue Byte. The gentleman to the right is Benedikt Grindel. He's the director of live operations, so he's in charge of the publishing actions we do for all of our free-to-play games. We are the spearhead of free-to-play gaming within Ubisoft, so we have several of these games up and running right now. Before going into the publishing area, he was working as a producer for long years. He was the producer in charge of games like The Settlers, 5, 6, and 7, which is a major PC game franchise.
And Christopher Schmitz, to my left, is the director for product development at Ubisoft Blue Byte, and he's as such responsible for all of the portfolio in development. And before that, before he joined Blue Byte, something like 6.5 years ago, he was working for several companies in various roles, starting as a programmer, then moving into project management and production. And since he joined the company, as I said, about 6.5 years ago, the company has changed a lot. Back then, we were 25 people. Today, we are more than 300 in 2 different sites. And some of them want to say hello.
Hello, and welcome to Blue Byte.
Olá, bem-vindos a Blue Byte.
Bonjour et bienvenue chez Blue Byte.
Välkomna till Blue Byte.
Ciao, benvenuti alla Blue Byte.
Hallo und willkommen bei Blue Byte.
Ahojte, vítejte v Blue Byteu.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Blue Byte.
Blue Byteへようこそ.
Bonjour et bienvenue chez Blue Byte.
Hello, welcome by Blue Byte.
Добро пожаловать в Blue Byte.
Merhaba ve Blue Byte'a hoş geldiniz.
So that lady is our managing director, Limpa. She's also French, and we now have 27 different nationalities within our studio of more than 300 people, and therefore we have 27 different kind of cultures. And since this all happened and started, we have seen a lot of pros and also some cons. The pros are obvious. We can now do and create true international games because we can exchange a lot of innovative ideas. It's not a pure German game development studio anymore. It's truly international.
And also, of course, growing beyond Germany, so to say, getting lots of people inside from other territories, other countries, really helps to create a much larger pool of talents, people that coming from various parts of the world, different developers that worked on many different platforms.
Also, we can improve our productivity and profitability because we could inject talent we have not seen before. One of our senior producers was coming over from Sony, working on a large PlayStation title. And we have a creative director we just hired over from Electronic Arts, who was coming over from Canada. This kind of talent really helps to increase our productivity, giving us new insights and new ideas.
And of course, having many different nationalities on the team really is a good promotion of humanistic values. It's just a positive statement. So at the end of the day, it's just cool, to have all these different people in the studio. And we thought, like, well, we can manage all that easily.
But, well, when it comes to game development, we already have a few different roles, and all of you have experienced that before. The artists, programmers, producers, game designers. And even if these roles are talking to each other, there are already some kind of cultural conflicts. When a programmer is talking to a designer, it can have a clash of cultures already in that state. But then we were growing.
And when we were growing, we also started to add other roles from other areas, like marketing, like product management, like community management. So it just added a bit of complexity, and we thought, well, now we have different nations as well, so it will add just a little bit more complexity. But what we've really seen is that adding so many different people from different cultures doesn't just add complexity, it adds a different dimension. It's just a very different thing when a German programmer speaks with an Italian game designer, or a Belgian graphic artist with an American producer.
And so on and so on, and now we have so many different nations. We were really overwhelmed when we did our internal research how many different nations we have in our studio. And we were a German studio before, and all of the other nations, they somehow find us a little bit intimidating because we so directly communicate to these people, and we always really say what we think.
But of course, before we go on, there's one important thing we have to say. Now, when we talk about different cultures, we will definitely talk about stereotypes. But of course, every individual person is different from the other. So we have some Italian people who are very German. We have some French people who are very American. That happens, of course. But it still is just one thing that you can look at, and you can see if maybe this is also one answer to a question we may have. But as Christopher said, one thing is definitely sure, Germans are always intimidating. Or listen to one of our English game designers.
The one thing I would really like to change is occasionally just have a little less German shouting in the office. That can be a little bit scary. You sometimes think, I just want to hide under the desk.
Yeah, and that's because the Germans always say what they think, and that's because we want to demonstrate interest, good cooperation, and we want to show our involvement. And people could misunderstand this. And so let's go to the first example that we've chosen here, which is exactly that. If you start to have a meeting, what is the different meeting culture in different cultures? So we looked at 4 different ones for this example: America, France, Germany, and Japan. So how do you do meetings in these cultures? For example, the American culture, they do meetings quick, they want to reach decisions within that meetings, they are quite instinctual, they change topic if required, and they want to be effective in finding a good solution. The French people, however, they make very lively discussions. So they can really be very loud. They think out of the box, they wander around. They start with one topic, they go to a totally different one, then they go to the next one, and they look at it from a different angle. So it's a lot different, and also the decision-making is a lot different. And we, as the Germans, we think we have now a conclusion with the French. They suddenly start to reopen the topic again, to discuss it forever, again and again. And that's a problem for the German, because we also want to be very precise and sharp in time. So we start on time, have a clear agenda, a clear structure. So if people try to play around with our structure, it feels a little bit weird for us. And then you have, these are all, well, let's say Western cultures. If we go to the Far East, to Japan, their decisions are also important. But in meetings mainly, decisions that have already been agreed upon informally up front, they are just confirmed. So it's a totally different thing again. So if these people make one meeting together, it is very interesting to see what happens, and just to be aware of this. And we have one interesting example, or actually 2 interesting examples, of meetings that we had together with French people from our headquarters. Yeah, one very interesting thing, we did a kick-off meeting for our PC game Anno 1404. We were told before that the management has very limited time, and we must stay within the time box we have received. And if not, the management will just leave the room. So if you tell German people to stay in time, we take it triple serious. So we did that. So one of our guys had a huge white sports watch, and he was taking the time of all people speaking. And as somebody was overdrawing his time frame, he would get a warning from him. That was something which was extremely funny to the French, and they said, wow, that's typical German stereotype. Yes, and we will never get rid of it again. And then what we also have, we sometimes have meetings that we do via video conferencing systems. So what happens is we have a meeting, let's say at 9 o'clock, everybody meets in the room, we set it up, and what we have here is a mobile phone picture taken 10 minutes after the start time of the meeting, and you have to guess which of the picture is French and which is German. So in France, one person, probably the cleaning woman, still there, and all Germans sitting there, one next to the other, waiting for the meeting to start. So it's an easy call. It's important to say here, it's not a sign of disrespect by the French, it's just their culture. It's absolutely okay to be 15 minutes late, and nobody feels bad about it. For German people, we are taught since we are from early childhood that we need to be sharp in time, and for the French it's just different. So it's just a different way of conduct, and it's not about offending anybody. And this is really something that we have to point out a lot. And actually we show this picture sometimes now in the company. So really telling people, okay guys, this is the meeting. It's okay for us to be on time, but please expect that they may be a little later. It's not a problem. They don't want to offend you. They don't mean to say this is not important. But this awareness is really key. So this is one example that we've chosen here. And now let's move on to, well, a very big one, of course, communication. Communication is always difficult when you talk from one nation to another, when you have different cultural backgrounds. What you can see on the picture is, obviously, they have a little conflict. They are debating. Maybe the guy just does not understand, or they have a real conflict. Who knows? communication is important. The receiver's understanding shows if communication has been successful. So you need to check back and reconfirm if the message you wanted to send is valid, has been understood. And this is all based on the normal communication model.
So basically, if you want to say something, you make up your mind, this is what I want to say, and then you speak. But this is already a code that is influenced by your vocabulary and also by your culture. And the person who receives this information, again, decodes it. So we have to see how does communication work. And the example that we are taking here comes from Harvard Business Review. It's about an English person trying to say something to a Dutch person. And again, sorry for the stereotypes. We choose it for easiness of accessibility here.
So the British man wants to communicate. So he thinks, I think you're wrong. So now he tries to encode his message. He says, with all due respect. But and what does the Dutch understand?
The Dutch woman understands, oh, he's listening to me.
Cool.
So it's just the message is, with all due respect, oh, he has respect, so he's listening to me. So it's something that really is different from what was originally the purpose of the communication. Let's take another very clear example.
So the British man wants to say, it's not my fault, he thinks, and now he wants to encode this message. He says,
I'm sure it's my fault. Well, English people are trained to be very polite, so they will be very indirect. So you have to really maybe understand this code to see that what he's really saying is, well, I'm sure it's my fault. Oh, no, it's probably mine. But the Dutch person doesn't get it.
When she decodes it, she thinks it was their fault, so it's not my fault.
Yeah, so you see a strong contradiction, and we'll have a quick run at a third example here.
Yeah, your idea is stupid, he thinks. Now he wants to encode it again. Of course, he says, that is an original point of view. And she understands, wow, they like my ideas. That's awesome. So this is the kind of cultural misunderstanding we are talking about.
Yeah. So really, these are simple examples. But I mean, imagine this happening in an informal situation in a company, and this kind of misunderstanding can really lead to strong problems later on. So let's move forward with business and personal relations.
So this time we have taken the French and the Germans again. As their typical stereotype, and they start to communicate. So the Frenchman says, want to go for a drink? And the German one says,
well, we've put it in German, so some of you may understand it, some may not. Dienst ist Dienst und Schnaps ist Schnaps. Which basically means Dienst ist Dienst. When I'm in the office, I'm in the office. Then I work. But Schnaps is Schnaps. Schnaps is a German alcohol. When I am in my spare time, I'm in my spare time. So don't mix this. Of course, this is not fully true for all Germans, and it's definitely much looser, much more relaxed in the gaming industry, but it is still a German cultural background.
And the main reason for this is the French, they want to put trust in a person, not put trust in a subject. And to put trust in a person, you need to know the person more closely. So you want to hang out with that person for quite some time to really know and understand the person and to find out if you can put trust in that person.
So actually this want to go for a drink for a French person is really, it's part of business. It's part of, hey, I want to know my coworker. And this is really something that can be a strong conflict. And we have some interesting numbers here. Who attends happy hours or other social events with coworkers? So someone tested this in various countries. So you see here, China, 98%. So if the boss says, let's go for a drink, you better go. It's not a private thing. If you go further down, Germany at the very low end, 38%. And compare with France, of the Western cultures, one of the top countries, 64%. So again, this can really lead to a conflict afterwards. Hey, they never go out with me for a drink. Well, maybe it's just a cultural thing. Maybe it's not a personal problem.
We try to improve on that, actually. So we invite all of our people frequently, hanging out, drinking a lot of beer and these kind of things. That's very good. Giving feedback is another big cultural difference. Giving feedback on how to delegate things. So when people want to give feedback to their coworkers, employees, if they've done good or not, there are two very different approaches that we have seen here. For example,
let's point out one thing up front. For feedback in general, of course, everybody knows, also in Germany, it is important to give feedback frequently. Positive feedback. Hey, you did this very well. This is something that we all accept. But in Germany, we have this stereotype, and it's true, that Germans, if you don't criticize, it's like giving praise. So not communicating about something is not perceived as something negative. It may even be, hey, no one's talking with you, you probably do a very good job. We even have colleagues who say, I only give negative feedback because people need to understand what they can improve. Very German way to put this.
So no news is good news, but in the other countries, other territories, it's totally different because the manager tends to praise 3 times a day, and as soon as he starts to stop doing this, it's a critique. So hearing nothing, no news, is bad news. And in Germany, no news is good news. So you can imagine what it's happening when a French manager and a German co-worker are working together. I think the French manager would frequently visit his teammate, would praise him, and then the German one would think, well, he's making fun of me. He doesn't trust me. But if it's vice versa, the German manager and the French employee, the German manager would delegate work to him, then he wouldn't visit him for more than a week, and then the coworker would think, he doesn't like me, and the job I'm working on is not relevant, it's not important for the company, and I think there's a high level of mistrust in my person.
And actually we have one very concrete example in the company, so thanks for Piero to allow us to use his picture here. You've seen him in the video already. This is Piero Cioni. He is one of our game designers, excellent guy, great on game mechanics. Also does board games, so if you see his name, try it out. And he was working on some tasks when he just joined the company, and it's like, he came to us and said, like, am I doing a good job? And why did you even question that? And so we discussed about this. And at the end of the day, it came out he really thought, absolutely sure, of course, Italians, stereotype, always dramatize stuff a bit. He was absolutely sure, I'm going to get fired. And we thought, no, it's not true. So again, we had to adjust. We had to see how we can explain it to him, but he will still remain in Italian. Actually, when he joined the company, he was one of the first international people who came. Some of our friends made like a Germanification program for him, so which basically involves drinking lots of beer and eating boiled knuckle of pork. And but he will still remain in Italian. So we have to acknowledge that at the end of the day, we have to maybe give him more feedback and really understand that we have to react to this.
To fix this later, we had put him into another team because we also hired an Italian producer later on. So we thought it's a good idea to put him into the team of the Italian producer because he could potentially deal in a better way with him. But after some time we found out this is the most German Italian that we have ever met. And even Piero told us, well, that producer is qualified for a German passport. Because he's so German.
So now let's talk about another topic, formal versus informal communication. And again, the French and the Germans are very good to discuss this. French guy saying, but I told you so last week. You needed to deliver this. And the German one will probably recommend, where is the formal request? And
that's because Germans, one of our core pillars in our society is be efficient. So be in time and be efficient. So anything which is written down is supporting this kind of paradigm. So we want to have everything which is important written down. So the Frenchman is telling us something verbally because they try to communicate verbally and give us even important messages verbally. And that will result in our perception that the stuff he's telling us is not important because it's not written down. And therefore it will be handled like a non-important task.
So quite often what we really see is that we have an important meeting, and afterwards people think like, yeah, but what should we do? Well, they told you, but I need it in writing. And it's really not considered to be even important if it's not in writing. So again, something that everybody managers in our team, German managers in our team, needed to learn, that it doesn't mean it's not important if you don't get it in writing. And also, some French people learned that sometimes it's good, if I really want something to be done for sure, 100%, to write an email. So it's just understanding the other culture.
Relationships are handled very differently from culture to culture. That's our example again with the Frenchmen and the Germans. So the French, they love to have discussions, and even if they've already taken a final conclusion, they want to open the topic and then they say, let us rethink this again. I just had another good idea. And then the German says, no, we can only do it in that way because we are very open and very honest.
Yes, and that's a very interesting example, and we want to go one step further here. Why is the German communicating like this? Because this is something that probably all of you have experienced at one point or another. If you work with Germans, they tend to be very strict, very direct, sometimes they appear very unfriendly. There was a saying in Germany, tell the truth even if it hurts. And they say this because they want to be effective, and they say like, this is the task at hand, I have analyzed it, and this is my conclusion. The problem is, the Germans, task-related solution solvers, the French, they are very person-related. They relate to the person. And they take the exact same statement in a much different way.
And the reason for this is French people are normally giving feedback very indirectly, and when it comes to the occasion that they are giving very direct feedback, they do this in order to demonstrate their power. So if a German one is approaching a French, doing this very direct communication, the French will understand he's seizing my power. He's attacking my power. That's a power play we are facing right now, a big conflict. But in fact, the German just wanted to be very effective. So that's a cultural conflict.
So we've already shared several examples, and I'm sure some people of you can share others. But at this point, we started to think, how can we try to understand it better? Is there something below this or beyond this that can help us to have maybe a frame in which we can look at this? And this is a good example, because one of the underlying things here is what is called power distance. And power distance is one of the cultural dimensions defined by a Dutch researcher called Gerd Hofstede. And it was one of the approaches to try to see how do different cultures interact and how are they working. And so for power distance, we have a definition.
The definition of power distance is that individuals in societies are not equal. And the level of power distance is to which extent these individuals will accept that there's a smaller or bigger power distance. That means the power distance between a manager and an employee can be much smaller or much bigger.
So if you are if you have two people that are coming together that have a different feeling about this power distance, you will have conflicts like the one we've just seen. So in this example, the power distance in France is relatively high. It's one of the highest in Western cultures. So some of you who may know French companies, they often have le patron. It's the boss. So the boss says, this is what we do, this is the direction we take, everybody does it. It's very clear. In Germany, the power distance is relatively low. So even if the boss says something, it's absolutely okay that others come and say, I totally disagree with what you're doing. And it is not perceived as something that would be out of the norm. It's absolutely okay. And actually, we have some people from Austria in the audience. The territory with almost the lowest power distance, one of the lowest in Europe, is Austria. So there it's even it's even more okay to really challenge your boss, and it's not perceived as a problem or as a lack of respect. Whereas in France, it would be different.
So in countries like Austria or Germany even, the manager is more like a coach or more service function, and if a decision needs to be taken, it's always in close consensus with all of the co-workers. And in France, it's more like le patron is dictating what needs to be done, and you are not authorized to challenge this. Maybe a little bit extreme, but it's going into that direction.
So let's move to the next example here, which we called risk appetite. And now we chose a German and an American.
So risk appetite is to which degree are you willing to enter risk? So the Americans, of course, because of their culture and their history, they say, yippee-yay, let's go for it. Just run, just do it, and then it will work out somehow in the end. But the Germans, they are different.
The German always says, but on page 112, there was a problem. So what is really happening here in the background? The German thinks they do not manage the risks. We will fail.
And the American thinks they get lost in details. They're so worried they will fail.
So now imagine the role of a manager of these two people, asking them, so what do you think about this project? Both of them will say, we will fail. So hey, you have the same opinion. No, they don't, because they do it because of totally different things. And actually this also shows that there is an opportunity, because if you use, well, let's say, the direction and the drive from the American style and the Germans who are looking at the problems together, this may actually be a very good thing. But in communication, it can really be a big conflict.
Yeah, and that's based on one of the dimensions called uncertainty avoidance. And uncertainty avoidance, the definition is, should we try to control the future or just let it happen? So that's the extent to which people in that society will accept that you can plan the future or you can't plan the future.
And again here, we have a difference between Germany and the US, and we'll see some other examples later on. But it's a relatively high difference here. So, all the different cultural dimensions, and actually that's a picture of Gerd Hofstede, who did this study. He was a researcher at IBM and started to do this in the 70s. And we will now look at the 4 cultural dimensions he started to do in the very beginning. And then we just mentioned some of the other ones that he's also added later on.
So it's power distance that we already discussed, uncertainty avoidance, the 2 new ones which are called masculinity versus femininity, and we have individualism versus collectivism.
And then 2 that we will not go into detail now, which is pragmatic versus normative and indulgence versus restraint. So we looked at power distance and uncertainty avoidance already, so let's take a look at masculinity versus femininity.
So that's a dimension where we say more masculine cultures, they more go for competition, achievement and success is much more important, and there's always a winner and the winner takes it all. So we can see the Americans are of course a masculine culture.
And for feminine societies, it's much more about consensus, about being social, about quality of life. It's not so achievable to stand out. We're always in consensus, which of course in meetings is a totally different culture. And then we come to individualism versus collectivism.
So that's the definition how the more the people look for themselves or more for their community. In countries which are very individualistic, the people will tend to look for their direct family or their own, will put that on priority. And in the more collectivistic countries, they will more look for the community, being part of a larger group, and that's the Asian countries actually.
Yes, so after looking at these cultural dimensions, we are going to tell you how you can get more information on this, because it's really interesting. So this is the homepage of the Hofstede Center, done by Professor Hofstede, and you can check the values that they have. So for all of the, almost all countries in the world, they do quantitative studies to really check it out. Now, of course, this is simplified, because in Germany, in the US, in every country, you don't have one culture. It's not just the individual, but it's also north, south, west, east, background, lots of differences. But still, it can give you an indicator, and what we've seen when we look at the situations we have in our company, this is really interesting, and Professor Hofstede has done many studies on this to validate his research.
It's going on for quite some time, and they have redone the research from different perspectives and could always confirm it back again and again. So now let's look at a few more examples. So for power distance, we can see China has a very, very high power distance. That would mean in China, if the manager is dictating the work, the co-worker will not even think about discussing it with his manager. And we've seen that. We have worked with Chinese partners, and we, as the people who gave the job to the Chinese partner and to talk with the managers, whatever was done later was done exactly the way we wanted it. So it was done by order, and then they did it exactly the way. It was not questioned at all. And you can see all the European nations are more lower, but the French are much higher than all of the other ones we see there. And then we have uncertainty avoidance. What's kind of interesting is that the Japanese are very high and the Chinese are very, very low. That must be some kind of religious reason, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't know. We could check on the homepage. Yeah. We could check on the homepage. But again, it's interesting to see if you can validate some of this. We have Germany and the US, and we would confirm that the English are very much like the US from our experience. And again, it's something to check in your life if you've seen something like this. And then masculinity versus femininity. Yes, the Asian country, Japan, is very, very masculine, so it's more about competition and standing out. While we also have countries in Europe which are very feminine, for example, the Swedish. I once did a project in Sweden, and I learned it's one of the most feminine countries in the world, and that means they are not looking for competition, they're more looking for community, social, good behavior. In meetings, they always want to reach consensus. So if then one of these German juggernauts is walking into a meeting and he's not aware of this, then he will start fighting and debating, and this will offend all of these teammates heavily.
And of course, this is also very interesting. Of course, at the end of the day, everybody wants to get a good solution. So let's take a pure German meeting. They will be very precise, they have their agenda, they reach a solution, but they are not very consensus-oriented in the meeting. So maybe some things get lost there. In Swedish, they will be very consensus-oriented. They will always ensure that everybody's on board. And maybe they don't, and so this is good, but maybe they don't reach the result, and they have to reach it in other ways. The clash happens if those come together. And to really appreciate what the others can bring to the picture and not just see it as an obstacle is also important. But first is awareness.
And then individualism versus collectivism, not a big surprise. Americans, British are very individualistic. They look for themselves and their family first. And the Asian countries are more like part of a large group, a large community, and look for their group first.
And now, of course, if you think about this, and if you have a situation in your studio, in your life, where you see like, oh, it's not a simple thing. You can't just look here. Oh, okay, I understand. All of these overlay, and you have individual people, but it can really help you to have a bigger toolbox to really understand this. And there are a lot of examples you can find. We'll give you some references later. So, our three main messages that we have.
It's quite obvious. It's awareness. It's understanding what are the difference, and to really know they exist. So if you're on a meeting or you're talking to people from other cultures, you should know there's a difference, and that you should try to embrace the difference and don't see it as an obstacle. And if something is happening which you feel offending, maybe it's because of a cultural difference and it was not meant in any evil in any kind of way.
Yeah, so this awareness is the first step. The second step is acceptance. You have to accept the differences. At the end of the day, we will not be successful, and it's good that all the people that come to Germany will work like Germans later on. It takes away a lot of opportunity, and it's just also not realistic. An Italian will always stay an Italian at the end of the day. And so it's also about acceptance and then embracing it.
And then finally, action, of course. You have awareness, you have accepted it, now you need to put this into action. You need to take the advantages, get over the obstacles you might see, and develop a plan on how to do that. And that's our next topic. How do you do that? That you make biggest use of intercultural teams.
Yeah, we will not go into too much detail here. Again, we'll quote some good references there. There are very, very good papers on this, how you take action here. But basically, there's 4 steps that you have to take. First one is adaptation.
Acknowledging cultural gaps openly and working around them. So you need to see what is the problem, what is the exact cultural difference, and then work out a plan on how you can overcome them within the existing construct you have.
And one of the things that's really important here is, in the beginning, really to understand, is this just a communication problem? So we can solve it and adapt very, very easily. So you just have a simple change in your meeting and it will work fine, or you just make people aware of stuff. Or is there something other, something stronger that we have to solve, and then you go to the next step?
And next one is the structural intervention. That means you need to change the structure of the team. You need to put the people in the right places that they can perform and can work well. That's what we did with our Italian game designer, Piero. We put him in this other team where there's an Italian producer because we thought that guy can take care better, but in the end he was way too German. So.
Then, of course, there is managerial intervention. So really saying like, okay, we need to set some other norms here. And actually, this is something that kind of happened over time. Maybe not so like in a strict sense, like now we take a managerial action, but over time, the way we did our meetings changed. The way we interacted with our headquarters changed because we understood better what happened. And then this intervention, which came more over time, was really a big game changer for us.
And then, of course, the final exit. If it really doesn't work out, you also need to consider doing an exit scenario, taking that person out of the team, replace him, or just make him redundant, because sometimes it just doesn't work.
But at the end of the day, the key thing is here, exit mainly means to take someone out of the team where he is, because there may be some conflict, and it may be cultural or not, that doesn't work. So it's not necessarily about making him really redundant, but putting him into a different place where he can perform much better, hopefully.
So that is our AAA strategy: awareness, acceptance, and action.
Yes, and there's a lot of more information. We just put 2 books here. There's lots of more you can easily find. This is the homepage of the Hofstede Center, where you can check all the different things. It's a fun read. Also, you really get in-detail information for each country. So, for example, we had Argentina in our situation, in our example. So you can really check Argentina, not only what is the score, but why is it like that? What do they take as explanations, specific examples? So it's really very interesting. And in Harvard Business Review, we just put 2 articles here, and you can there are good cross references. So it's really interesting, and you will find also a lot more about the strategy, how you go through it, and how you analyze the situations with cultural conflicts.
So it's a very, very interesting topic, and you will always start to laugh about it when you read it, because there are so many situations we are experiencing every day, and that's the reason why we started all of this. And our journey is not at its end. We are just starting to embrace this topic and to get deep into it.
Yes, so this is it. We hope that we have given you some interesting information, maybe some strategies you can follow or some awareness. We are ready to answer some questions right now. You can also contact us via email, and we will also have a meet and greet tomorrow at the Ubisoft lounge that we have here on the 3rd floor at 11:30, so there is some time to discuss about this more in depth. Yeah. So any questions, now is the time. If you have questions, you can either walk up to the microphone, or we repeat the question otherwise, but it's nice if you go to the microphone.
To what degree the company culture trumps over the national culture?
A lot. I think games industry is already pretty much different to the normal national cultures. So what we were talking about is of course like a stereotype. It might be different from company to company, and I would say our culture is already pretty international, also for the German people we have. So I think a German development team is already pretty different if you look into a team in the old economics, if you have like some manufacturing company.
Yeah, and actually I've worked for a totally non-gaming business before, carpet manufacturing. And we also worked with a French company, and I can say that it was really very, very strong, the cultural difference, and the company culture was very weak. So really there it played a very big role. But with Ubisoft now, it's a lot better. But still, we see a lot of things that are still present.
The stuff we said about the French people, we heard from our boss, Odile. She was working also in other industries before. She says it's much more drastic in the other industries. So they're already quite Europeanized. So.
Hi. Could you maybe say a couple of more words on how you work with raising that awareness of the cultural differences?
Yes. So one thing we've done an intercultural training in the company. So we had someone come in and really first step teach our management. This is a bit like what's underlying here, and these are some approaches how you can deal with it. So that's the first step. And now this was already very good. So this was our awareness thing, and now to really with all the different nations we have right now, we have a lot of meetings with these people and check, and it's a lot of communication. It's a lot to help people to communicate better, and to always, when we see there is a conflict, to always check, is it really a conflict, a core conflict, or is it just a communication issue that maybe has cultural reasons? And
also to remind the people frequently about this, because our Italian game designer, we told him about this. 6 weeks later, he thought he would be fired again. So he will forget about this quickly. So you need to do it again and again. And let's be very honest, one of the things we do is we do talks like this, which also helps us to get even deeper into the subject.
Thank you.
That was actually very, very close to my question. I was wondering, how does an intercultural training work? If you have actually 27 nations to cater to, do you just do kind of Germanifying training or something like that? How does it work?
Actually, we had a trainer, a professional trainer. There are professional coaches you can book for this, and they will tell you about the subject. And they will give you analysis about what kind of nations are in your studio, and then you can discuss them conflicts you have experienced, and they will tell you the mechanics behind it and try to help you overcoming it. So. And actually the examples that we had in this training were only for 3 or 4 different cultures. So it was not really about
knowing everything about the different cultures, but really understanding, oh, this was the problem with these guys. So maybe now I rethink the problem with this other guy. I have no idea about his culture, or at least no deep understanding. But then you can go there and you can ask, and what we really found out sometimes, like with the Italian game designer, we don't want to put him too much on the spot here, but it's a very clear example.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe this is also behind this. So just sitting together and being more open about this, and not assuming too much. Before we were assuming too much, so we had to check our own decoding thing, and I think this, just to have this additional awareness was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And the training was targeted to managers, or was it kind of across the board?
This first training was just for managers. I think we included some producers, but it was mainly on the management level, and we will see. I mean, since then we have grown even more. More different cultures appeared, so it's something that we will move forward with.
You also need to raise the awareness that this is an important topic, because we also invited a few of our normal staff, like the lead designer, Andreas, was invited.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, no, I'm not coming, it's not relevant for me. Why should I do this? So, yeah. So if you don't even understand that this is a big problem, then that's the first step you need to take.
Thanks.
Hi. As a producer and a manager, how do you mitigate the problems that may arise from maybe treating people differently and like adapting to the fact that there may be a cultural difference between everybody and who you're working with?
Could you, I'm not sure if I fully understood the question. Could you?
If you're adapting to the different cultures that you have within your team, are there any problems that arise from that because you're treating different, people differently?
Okay, I see your point. I think not. It's not a one-on-one thing. It's not like we speak with one person, okay, so what is the issue? It's something we really want to bring to a team level. And of course, as we mentioned in the beginning, it's something that we know it from, let's say, the differences between a programmer and a game designer that they always had, even if they're only German, both of them. And also this we discussed with everybody. So by being very open about this, and just for everybody to think, okay, please always consider that there may be, it may be different if you speak with someone from this or from this background, raises this awareness. And we have not seen so far that someone says like, yeah, but they're always so nice to this guy, and I'm a German, so I still get punched. We try to be more intercultural altogether. And that really, from what I can see, works quite well.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Were there any positive things that you see in the games itself because of these differences? Do you see more, or is there more positive things than differences?
I'd say positive things are super. That's what we started with. Of course, this is super to have all these different cultures, and it brings a lot of additional value to the company. So we see the difficulties that we face. They are by far not that big that we think like, oh, we can't do this. Absolutely not. It's enriching. It makes our games better. It makes our games more international. It's just something you also have to understand will happen.
So without these people, we couldn't do what we are doing right now. So that was, since several years, we tried to be an international studio, and now we have fulfilled that. We have achieved that, and that's very important for us. So without all of these people, we couldn't do it.
Do these behaviors get into the game design itself?
Oh, that's a good question. Do we make more? I think, but I'm not sure if that's a cultural thing. We definitely make more international games because of that. But I couldn't say like this specific thing is only in the game because of a guy from Spain. So
it's more the look and feel and taste, and so it's not about features.
Thanks.
Sure.
Very good. Quick question. Something was mentioned before, like company's culture. And do you believe that company's culture is being sort of instilled in everybody through people's management or project management better?
People's management or?
People's management or project management?
Project management, okay.
Yeah.
You mean if the culture is implemented by project management or people management? Or?
Well, meaning keeping everybody on track and keeping everybody focused. what is working better, or what has worked better?
I think as we talk about cultures, and cultures are about people, and as we said in the beginning, it's a very individual thing. So if I speak with 3 Italians, they can be totally different. So it's foremost, it's people management. It's how do I interact with these persons, and intrapersonal relationships are the major thing. I think project management cannot be underestimated, because how I organize my processes and so on can also have a strong cultural, there can be a strong cultural influence beyond that.
It needs to run in sync, so one can't be without the other, I would say. And good project management is there to identify your scope and where you are, and if you think you can still hit the objective in the end, and if not, then you will do corrective measures. And one of the corrective measures is to research if it's a cultural problem, and then to do better people management. So it needs to be in sync.
And that's a very German approach.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for your questions, and have a great show.